everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another interview of Changing the Perspective. Today we're here with John Stroup with Freeway Ministries. He's actually here to tell his story. He's here to tell how he kind of started with a life that wasn't what he really wanted in the long run and how he built Freeway. This will be a two-part series. The first one we're going to talk about is his testimony. The second, we really want to bring you all the resources that Freeway has to offer. I've learned a ton just in my research, and I hope that we can offer some resources and some benefits to those people out there that really kind of need some help in this world. I know this world right now is very crazy. It seems to be worse than it's ever been, although there's probably a lot of things I've been sheltered from that maybe John has seen and I have not. So we're here just to bring you kind of a variety of what is out and how we can help you. So, everyone, John with Freeway Ministries.
Hello.
Tell us where this all started for you. Tell us your story.
Well, I will say that, I cannot take credit for building Freeway.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a work of God, and there was two other men that were part of that, two other families, myself, Rick Lecter, and Michael A., and their families. So I will say that, and I mean that with grace and humility, not trying to correct you or anything, but
no,
I don't want to, try to take the glory for that.
Yeah.
But so my story, basically, I'm a first generation Christian. I grew up in a home. I like to think about the scripture in Isaiah where God says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, and light for darkness, darkness for light." Well, that was my upbringing. We call good evil and evil good. I was raised by a single mom. I come from a long line of outlaws and career criminals, I would say. So my dad died when I was a little boy, probably 2 years old. And I was raised with my brothers and my sisters old enough to be my mothers and fathers. So when I was born an uncle. And I was born in St. Louis. My dad died. My brother was put in prison for murder. He shot a guy who sliced him down the face with a stop sign in a neighborhood fight. So all that, kind of accumulated.
Yeah.
Accumulated.
That's good.
To a point to where my mom moved away to Perryville, Missouri. I had a grandma there. I didn't really know that side of my mom's family at all. We were kind of the black sheep.
Okay.
Well, my brother was in Supermax prison, which is a level 5 prison, as high as you go. It's called the Old Walls. If you're a convict, you'll know what that means, or come from a criminal background. But it was MSP, Missouri State Penitentiary. They give tours there now in Jeff City. We went on a prison visit, and I have an uncle who burned our house down while we were gone and tried to kill my mom. And so my mom started over with nothing on a prison visit with a little boy in kindergarten in Jeff City. So she called back to her mom's and she said, "Oh, thank God you're alive. The house on fire. We thought you were dead." And so my mom started off in Jeff City, Missouri with me on a prison visit.
Wow.
And so that's where I call myself from Jeff City because I was raised there since kindergarten. That's where our journey began. My mom and I, she was a single mom. She did the best she could. She was a bartender at a biker bar called The Jungle. And you can imagine what went on there. So my whole life growing up, my brothers were in and out of prison. I grew up in the prison visiting rooms. On one Saturday, I would be visiting one brother in prison. And then that next day on Sunday, I would go visit another brother. And I used to watch my mom tie up bags of drugs and put them in balloons, like I'm drinking this cup of coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
I was that normal. Yeah. It was just what happened. And that's just the way she knew how to live, And she took care of me. I remember growing up and, we ate like raviolis and grilled cheese sandwiches for dinner. I mean, that was kind of a staple for us. There was bread with every meal because she was trying to stretch our food. I didn't know that then. But my mom would not have a meal and I would have a big meal and I would think, why? I would ask her, "Are you not eating?" And she would say, "I'm not hungry." But now I realize in hindsight that she would rather me have a good meal than her have one and me have one. And so, that's kind of my mother's mentality. So while I'm mentioning her, is she was the dominant figure in my life. Yeah. And so me and my mom became crime partners. So my mom she had chronic emphysema. She was on 200 foot of oxygen. And she came to me with 2 checks, a Social Security check and disability check. And she said, here's our money and here's our bills. They didn't match. And I'm a teenage boy.
Yeah.
And so I began to sell drugs. And I would get the drugs and she would manage the money. I remember being 14 and 15 years old and having somebody take me to East St. Louis where my sisters lived to buy marijuana from their husbands, and driving all the way down there from Jeff City back to pick drugs up. And I wasn't even old enough to drive a car. And you know, that's how we lived. And so our bills started getting paid. We were intelligent as you could be as far as, you know, drug dealing goes. We had a way to do it. But anyways, my mom ended up dying in 1999. And then I had a brother who overdosed, 30 years old. And then my brother shot my other brother over drugs. And that happened in 3 years.
Oh, man.
And so I'm in my early 20s. And I had no way to grieve. And I think about it now, you know, I didn't know how to grieve.
Yeah.
I had no faith. Nobody in my home mentioned God except for a cuss word. I don't remember ever seeing a Bible. We went to church to get food.
Yeah.
You know, the food bank and stuff. I remember that. And so here I am, you know, homeless. I became a drug addict. I became a drug addict, drug dealer. Then I just became a homeless dope fiend. And so from the early 2000s until 2008, I was homeless.
Wow.
And I wasn't living in a tent. I'm a city boy. I don't even know how to put a tent up. Camping to me is staying at the hotel by the lake, you know.
Yeah.
But I would go couch to couch and dope house to dope house. And my drug addiction took me to a place to where my courage was gone. I had what's called street credit. People respected me. And it got to the point where no one did. And I was an IV user. I became a needle junkie. And then in 2008, I ended up, well, actually before 2008, I was with the drug dealer, and he was selling drugs, and I was kind of hanging out with him to use drugs and manipulate him out of his drugs. And I took some dope in a house to a lady who was a prostitute. Her name's Mary Ann, and it was across the street from JC High School. And then later on, I got indicted for sales of drugs in a school zone. So I didn't tell on him. I took the case, and I ended up going to prison in 2008. I've done lots of time in the county jail. I've probably done at least 2 or 3 years in the county jail. I've read a Bible in jail. I would call myself a Christian, but I wasn't. But in 2008, everybody I knew was either in prison or dead. So I go to prison in 2008. I have nobody to write. I have no one to call. I have no one to visit me.
Yeah.
I was alone, and I lived on $5 a month. I didn't have a GD. With $5 a month, you could buy 5 postage stamps, a stick of deodorant, a stick of toothpaste.
Okay.
And that's what I lived on. I didn't have enough money to buy shampoo to wash my hair, and I would wash my hair with what's called Bob Barker soap. It's a donated soap that comes into prisons, and it's like lye. And that's what I wash my hair with. And so here I am in a lonely place, and I found the Bible, and I wanted to know what Jesus did with bad guys because I was one. And I found a scripture in Romans 3 that says there's none good, no, not one. And that was exciting to me. It changed my life. I realized that there is none good. God's standard of good is Jesus, and there is none good. None good. No, not one. And so I thought, man, that's exciting to a bad guy, you know, who knows he's bad, but that's bad news to people who think they're good.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to know if God could use a man like me. And so I began to read my Bible. And it was a prison Bible. I still have it. It says free on the inside. It has handcuffs on it. I read the Bible till it fell apart.
Okay.
It has no front, no back, no bind. I hated reading. I never read. But I devoured the Word. And I found out I was a poster child for Christianity. That not only could God use guys like me, but He handpicked them and called them by name, purposely. Outcast. People who, He never went to the temple and called anyone following. Yeah. He went to the fishing yard And he called, man, they called sons of thunder. He wanted to rain fire down on people. I mean, rough people, you know, people that were uneducated, the Bible says, and unlearned, according to the book of Acts, chapter 4. And so, so I surrendered to Jesus, and my prayer was simple. I can't tell you the exact words I prayed, but I can tell you what I said. And I said, use me like the drugs use me. Give me a purpose. And I gave him my life. I surrendered my life to Jesus. So here I am in prison. I made a commitment never to go back to Jeff City. I wasn't going, not never, but I'm not going out. I'm not leaving prison to Jeff City. You know, but I had these questions. What's the book of Jasher? The Old Testament talks about the book of Jasher. Who is this Saul? Is he the Old Testament Saul, the New Testament Saul, they say? Who wrote the book of John? Is it John the Baptist? So I had all these questions I needed answers to. And you don't go up to a prisoner and say, excuse me, fellow convict, can you help me learn the Bible? And so I prayed that God would I could find somebody to write who was a real church member, who really went to church and loved Jesus. And so I had a cellmate come into my cell. I was locked up 18 months on a 5-year sentence. My first time down, my first felony, my first prison sentence. A guy named David Hubman came in my prison cell. And I mean, if you went in my cell, you would see borrowed paper and with a borrowed pen and just all these notes. I would just write the Bible down and all these things. And he knew I was a Christian. And I told him I wanted someone to write. He said, I know a guy. His name's Dewey. And he's a retired missionary. And I thought, man, a missionary, isn't that cool? Yeah. I don't know what a missionary is. but all that sounds great. Cool. And so I wrote Dewey Houston, and he wrote me back. And I wrote him, and he wrote me back. So my $5 a month, 5 postage stamps, a stick of deodorant, a stick of toothpaste. 5 postage stamps were for him. Okay. And so mail calls a lonely time in prison for a lot of people. Okay. And it was a lonely time for me. But Dewey wrote me every week. And I wrote him back. 18 months later, I got out of prison. He ended up writing a place in Cuba, Missouri. You have to have a home plan when you leave prison. You have to have somewhere to go. It has to be accepted by the probation and parole. I had nowhere to go. Yeah. I had no money to get into a place. And so Dewey wrote this place for me in reference. He gave me a reference. And they accepted me. So I get on a bus at the Greyhound bus station from Kansas City. I'm in the Kansas City bus station now. I leave St. Joe prison, my last prison, on the way out. And I ended up going to Fort Good Shepherd in Cuba, Missouri. I couldn't find any work. First day I get out of prison, I called Dewey Houston. And I said, Dewey, this is John Stroup. I want to thank you for writing me all those letters, and you never met me. And he said, I've been writing prisoners 13 years, and you're the first one to ever get out and thank me. Oh. 13 years. Wow. And later on, I found out, in my own opinion, the reason that he never quit is because his motivation was the faithfulness of God. Not thank yous. And I think I use him in sermons all the time, but I think it's 2 Timothy 2:13 says that where faithless he remains faithful, he can't deny himself. And God's faithfulness is a great motivation. And so 21 days later, Dewey picked me up from Cuba, brought me to Springfield. Salvation Army Harbor House said they would take me, 636 North Boonville Avenue, homeless shelter. It was too late to move in, so Dewey took me home. And his wife did not know I was coming. And he's in his 70s. They're retired missionaries, Assemblies of God missionaries. And she looked at me and looked at him like, this guy's going to chop us up and put us in the freezer, you know. And what is my husband thinking? And so the next day he took me to the Salvation Army, and that's where my journey began in Springfield. Okay. That's how I got here. Wow.
Wow. So tell me then how Freeway, the thought, the idea, the action just to get it started came from, because you're here. Now what?
Yeah. So I was called to preach and called to ministry before I knew what ministry was. Okay. So you realize when I got saved, I didn't know anything but Jesus. I'm Baptist in doctrine, but I didn't know that. I told you earlier I used to make fun of Baptist people, you know. The only interaction I had was with Pentecostal people. Dewey was Pentecostal. Jim Snell, who ran the Harbor House at the time, was a Pentecostal preacher. And I was just in love with God's Word. And I had some printed off commentaries that I got from a cellmate in prison, a guy who was in the same pod as me. And I began to read these commentaries, and it helped answer all these questions that I had. And I thought Dewey Houston was sent to me by God to teach me the Bible, but Dewey Houston was sent to me by God to teach me to love people like Jesus. Ah. Warren Wiersbe was sent to me by God to teach me the Bible. Okay. And his commentaries were from heaven as far as I'm concerned. And so I had this calling. I had a gift to study the Bible. And so I would get up early in the morning at the Harbor House, and there was a broke Coke machine in the chow hall. And you're in a homeless shelter with 20 men in a bay. Okay. Light comes on at 8. You turn that light on before 8, you're going to be in a fist fight. So I would get up every day since I've been saved. I would get up and read the Bible every morning. And so I'd get out of the top bunk. I had a little flashlight under my pillow. I'd get that flashlight, put it in the cuff of my hand. I'd turn that flashlight. I could see my locker. I'd do the combination and shine it in there, and there's my prison Bible and printed off commentaries. And I would go to the chow hall. There's a broken Coke machine. It's dark, and the C on it would light a table up just enough so I could study. And I would begin to study every morning. And I would take a city bus, look for work, and I'd say, give me a job nobody wants. I'll do it better than anybody's ever done it. All I had in my name was some hand-me-down clothes and a pair of tennis shoes that said Pookie on them. And somebody named Pookie gave to somebody who gave to me. Oh no! I didn't know Springfield. I went to the bus station and said, I want to go where the restaurants are, and nobody would hire me. And so I ended up getting a job as a bell ringer. And then I ended up seeing there was a building behind me that was being remodeled. They said it was going to be a restaurant. It was a Hoo-Ha Mongolian Grill. Yeah. I walked in there and ran into the owner, and I said, give me a job nobody wants. I'll do it better than anybody's ever done it. And she gave me an application. She hired me. And I got plugged into a church that Dewey went to, and they had a recovery ministry there by Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers from, I'll give him a plug, if I can remember the name of his ministry. I'll think of it though. That's fine. But Mike Rogers has a ministry there. It was called God Addiction in the Bible Gap, and now it's called Restoration, I think. But he has a ministry. It's on its own now, but it was a part of the Praise Assembly of God. And I went and preached at a soup kitchen. I got booed off the stage, and went back and did it again, and got moved. And so I began to preach for Mike. Mike gave me an opportunity to preach, and I would preach sometimes 2 or 3 times a month on Friday nights. And people would begin to get saved. And the ministry's like a baby. You can babysit someone's baby, but you can't tell them how to raise it. Yeah. And so I love Mike, and I always have respect for him. But it's his ministry. And so things that he did, maybe and I found out I wasn't Pentecostal. So I can't go to a Pentecostal church and submit to a Pentecostal pastor if I disagree with some of their beliefs. And so, I met these guys at a coffee shop Bible study, Michael A., Rick Lechner, and they had a passion for people. By this time, I found out I was a father. I got DNA tested in prison, and I found out I had a son. Oh. And he was 2.5. I never had a dad. Yeah. And so I began to write. Found out where he was, wrote his mother. He got rescued. He was rescued from a meth lab, and I called the DFS in California, Missouri, and said I want my son. And I kind of just rambling a little bit, but they and this is kind of where the story all begins to fit together. But they said, you don't have a license, you're not legal to drive, you don't have nowhere to live, you're living in a shelter. You don't have a car, you don't have a place to live. But little did they know I was saving every penny. Yeah. And riding the city bus. I wasn't trying to get my license so I could spend money on a car. Right. I was saving my money. And by this time I'm a manager, a salary manager at the Hoo-Ha, taking the city bus to work, Yeah. And I said, I'm coming after my son. And I told the lady who witnessed to her, I said, God opens doors nobody can open. He shuts doors nobody can shut. And so in the process of time, I went in there and met my son. He was 2.5 years old. He was like Ishmael in the Bible. Every man's hand was against him. His hand was against every man. He was a wild man, untrained. I mean, he was, and the owners of the Hoo-Ha took me up there to court. And Dewey Houston took me on my first supervised visit. And so they gave me a list of things to do, and I did them. I got a license, I got a car, I got a place to live. 15 months later, I had my son. So here I am, less than a year out of prison, with a 2.5-year-old little boy trying to be a daddy, working at the hoo-ha, preaching the gospel, bought a van, started picking up homeless people for church, met these guys at a coffee shop, already had ministry experience with Mike Rogers, kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do. We kind of met together, we changed some things. We didn't copy his ministry all the way, but we did learn, model some things that he did. And we started Freeway in 2011 as a ministry of Broadway Baptist Church.
Okay.
So I went to Brother Eddie Bumpers with Rick Kleckner, who actually was a part of that church. And we cast a vision to him. I said, the people we're after are going to smell. They're not going to know your church rules. They're going to come in with a hat on. They're not going to be married. They're going to live together. They're going to smoke in front of your church doors. They're going to be drunk. They're going to break in the building and steal your stuff. I mean, I made it sound like it was just going to be impossible. And he said, I said, they're going to shake your members up. Your old money's going to leave. And he said, my church needs to be shaken up. He said, you can have that building in the back. There was like a house back there for Sunday school classes.
Okay.
And he said, you can fit about 40 people in that big room. And if you outgrow it, we'll get you another building. Here's some vans to use. So the first night we outgrew our building. And I called him and we said we outgrew the building.
That's awesome.
And that's how Freeway began in 2011.
Okay. Wow. In the back of a church building, basically.
Yeah. In a little house.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any advice you would give to someone that is either in and out of prison or that's struggling in addiction and homelessness from your story, that's just struggling to find something? What advice do you give to those people?
Well, I ask anyone that comes to me for help, first thing I ask them 2 questions. The first one is, who are you? Mm-hmm. The second one, what is your purpose?
Okay.
And you have to be able to answer those 2 questions.
Do you find most people that living on the streets don't have the answers?
I find most people don't have the answers, period.
Not just addicts and living on the street and all that in general.
Period. We're all addicts.
Yeah. Just something.
I call it self-aholics.
Okay.
So you're selfish. It's called sin. And addiction is sin.
Yeah.
And so I had 3 men come in this building last month. One was a police officer. One was a guy who just had the Mexican Mafia stick ice picks in his feet, who looked like a mountain man, a biker. And one was a guy that just got out of prison and just beat his wife up, got put in jail. And all of them came for help. And not one of them knew who they were.
Yeah.
Or what their purpose was.
Okay.
And so addiction isn't the problem. Homelessness isn't the problem. Addiction and homelessness is what you see.
Okay.
Something else is the problem.
Yeah.
And when we get to the identity issue, then we can really make some headway.
Yeah.
And so once we get through who are you and what is your purpose, because I can answer those questions. I know who I am and I know what my purpose is. So now I have life.
Yeah.
I have a ministry. I have a reason to live every day. I'm not questioning myself anymore. And then the second thing I ask them is this: are you willing to do whatever it takes?
Okay.
If the answer isn't yes, I can't help you.
Yeah.
You're not ready yet.
Yeah.
Go back out there in the street. I'm just being honest. I don't have time to waste with people who aren't serious. And so we at Freeway have created a vetting system to weed out people who aren't serious.
Yeah.
And so I crawled through the gutters to get where I am today. And so, no one can come in this building and say, you don't know where I've been, or you can't understand, because I can. Yeah. And so can the men and women God has surrounded me with. And so I believe God's raising up an army right now for a great revival. And I'm excited about it. So the question is, who are you? What is your purpose? Are you willing to do whatever it takes? And so once we get through those 3 questions, then we can begin to do something.
Okay. I want to thank everyone for joining us today for part 1. Part 2, we're actually going to dive a little deeper into how those questions get you involved in Freeway. We're really going to talk about how this organization can be a resource for not just people that need it. Their saying is a little bit save save the world one broken life at a time.
Reaching one broken life at a time.
So
changing the world one broken
changing the world one broken life at a time. So we're going to kind of dive a little deeper on either how you can help all of those broken lives, or if you are one of those, how you can really get involved from the resources that Freeway offers. So that'll be in part 2. So everybody, please join us next week for part 2. We'll be super excited to really pass on the word of how Freeway has just continued changing the lives of many people around, not just local, but now globally. So we're really going to be pumped about what we can bring you for part 2. So I hope everybody has a great week. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Thanks.